Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
I'm your co-host, Rich Gear, and with us, Doug, we have a nice guest, Fred Foote. Glad to have you here this evening.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Nice
My pleasure.
Fred, I got in contact with through the Creation Research Society, and you've been a member maybe a year or so, or something like that. And I've, of course, been a part of the Creation Research Society since about 1973. And so it's been a long time. I've been collecting, and I've also published in the quarterly as one of the things that I've done over the years. And just recently I had a couple of articles written for the Creation Research Society.
Doug, it's the longest running creation organization that's still
I
around?
think it is the oldest. I remember Dr. John Moore of Michigan State University was one of the managing editors of the quarterly back when I was going to college at Michigan State.
Right, yeah.
And so
That's been a while.
Had a, he was the one who sort of got me interested in the creation and evolution issue. And although I had my interest peaked in it when I was attempting to create life in the test tube and do all these mad scientist type of experiments when I was in high school and college, and so I thought
young,
maybe
impressionable mind full of mush, evolutionary mush.
That's right, and
thought he could do it.
And when I actually got into the chemistry and what was really entailed in these experiments, I really realized that it doesn't work. It just the chemistry isn't there. It doesn't hold together, and so why? I was looking for a solution, and John Moore was part of the answers to all of that. But anyway, Fred, I wanted to welcome you to the show, and one of the things that I want to talk to you about is your website, which you have a website about the monkey trial, themonkeytrial.com,
That's right, themonkeytrial.com.
Yeah, for those who don't know what that is, that's the Scopes monkey trial. I mean, when you say the monkey trial, most people should know, but there are some of those who have not heard of it, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but most people who have heard of it have usually heard about it through the fallacious fiction piece called The Inherit the Wind.
That's
so
right.
You probably deal with all of those issues, right, on your website?
Yeah, the website attempts to compare what we think happened at the Scopes trial, which is portrayed in Inherit the Wind, versus what actually happened from the historical record, which is not hard to...
Because it's very well documented, as I understand. I
well,
mean,
there's the trial transcript. There's the hundreds of reporters were at the trial. It was a huge international event. There were films flown out every day and shown in theaters, and Detroit and Chicago. It was broadcast on the radio, the first trial ever broadcast. So it's a
Oh, really? On the radio? Okay. You know, the thing is, well, people don't realize too. This was, as I understand, if I'm correct me if I'm mistaken here, but it was the actual first big test trial for the ACLU.
That's right. The ACLU's first major case.
They've been going downhill ever since. They started at the bottom and they've sunk lower. You know.
It stands for All Criminals Love Us.
Yeah, I was going to say the American Criminal Liberties Union, but all criminals love us. Yeah, it's you know, the ACLU is an interesting organization. They ostensibly hide behind the Constitution. There are, I think, real constitutionalists in the organization. There used to be people that I think, even more so than today, really believed in the Constitution, wherever it took them. But I think that in recent years, the hatred of Christianity has outweighed any of that objectivity, and those people that may be still in there their voices have been shut out, if they ever were much in there. But from the very beginning, their antipathy towards Christianity seems to be very apparent when they really sponsored this trial with Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan.
That's right. Clarence Darrow really was an anti-Christian bigot,
Yes.
one might say. Alan Dershowitz of Harvard Law School calls him, a very bigoted and racist individual. So the ACLU itself got a lot of its early funding from Episcopalians and Quakers and pacifists and Christian groups.
Yeah.
So Darrow actually made them quite nervous because he was so virulently anti-Christian that after the trial, and very few people know this, the ACLU made every attempt to try to get Clarence Darrow off the case and fire him from the case. Yeah. He was, at the end of the Scopes trial, they built a college for William Jennings Bryan. Darrow was attempted to be fired by his employer, the ACLU, and the media tells us that, the Christians were beat, when in fact, I think the evidence is much, much stronger that William Jennings Bryan and the creationist cause in Dayton fared much better.
And we believe that Doug and I have talked about this over time, and despite the fact that we believe William Jennings Bryan actually did not give some of the best answers. Now, they may not have known it, and some of his arguments even seem to incorporate day, age, and gap theory kind of ideas in his ideas. Despite that, a lot of the arguments, Doug, you and we've talked about it, were actually pretty good arguments when we've gone over them. But if you were to say maybe that, quote David Letterman, maybe the top 10 things, or even the top 5 things that really stand out as far as what people think happened and what actually happened. What would be some of those you would think would be, and you take your time because we want to get this out here so the audience really gets what's going on there.
I would say probably the first thing that comes to mind is people think that the state of Tennessee passed a law that outlawed the teaching of evolution. And you will read that in any newspaper account, open the account, and they'll just say, Tennessee in 1925 passed a law prohibiting the teaching of evolution in the public schools.
Right, I've heard that many times. Yeah.
Oh, over and over, it's standard fare. And it's right, but it's only about, let's say, 1/2 millionth correct. In other words, it is 99.99999% inaccurate.
Okay, so what is the actual thing that they passed?
The truth is that the Tennessee prohibited the teaching of one species, mankind, that mankind evolved from a lower order of animals, contrary to the teachings of the Bible. So we have 2 million species. We have a solar system, an Earth, a planet.
Yeah.
All these things could have been taught, evolved. Every animal on the planet and the planet itself and so on could have been taught as truth or fiction or any way you wanted to teach it.
Okay.
And it would not have violated the act. There's one species out of 2 million that they didn't even want the Bible taught with regard to the species of mankind. They just didn't want the evolutionary species taught. And why did they pick out? So first of all, it's entirely fallacious to say that they outlawed evolution. You could teach it all day, every day. One species, you had to be quiet. Now, why would you have to be silent about one species? The left, the evolutionists, don't want this discussed very much, and the reason is what they taught when they were teaching the evolution of mankind in 1925 was eugenics. And eugenics, quite frankly, is the application of Darwinian principles to mankind and the improvement of the genetic stock of mankind meant you identified, well, who is genetically superior, then who's next, and who's down at the bottom of the genetic ladder, and then you would sterilize by force or by hook or crook those parts of the human race that were considered less fit.
By the way, that was the a la Margaret Sanger and her ilk,
Margaret
you know.
Sanger, absolutely.
Yeah.
Margaret Sanger, Henry Osborne of the New York Museum of Natural History.
Okay.
There was dozens of these people, and it actually migrated from the U.S. to Germany, and the Germans determined, well, the Jews were on the bottom of the evolution.
I see.
So the
Okay.
Germans, you can call them bigots, or you can call them dedicated evolutionists, and you'll get to the same answer. And you can see why this part of history has been suppressed. Michigan, incidentally, was very big in the eugenics movement, and there were people sterilized against their will in the state of Michigan, Native Americans, blacks, prostitutes, people with seizures, any difficulty at all, epileptics, they would be sterilized in this country. Well, that was what was being done in the United States in 1925, and William Jennings Bryan, who, this is only 15 years from Nazi Germany, William Jennings Bryan saw it, believed that mankind was all children of God, from the most disadvantaged, most handicapped, to Albert Einstein, and he came in and persuaded Tennessee legislatures that this teaching is resulting in sterilizations, and we saw what it did in Germany.
See, this is the thing, of course, that puts the lie to the fact that people say, oh, more people have been killed in the name of religion. Well, maybe in the name of religion, a lot of people have been killed, and there's been a lot of false religion. And even Christianity has had misapplication, and I tell people, look, there's a reason we had a Reformation. Okay, there was abuses that the Roman Catholic Church did back in those days, but that's not the teaching. Okay, that's not the teaching of Christ. Okay, where in Darwinism, that is the teaching.
That is absolutely.
That is the teaching. It is not a misapplication of it. It is the application of it. I mean, you know.
And we have a personal stake in this, Rich, because of my sister and your wife. You know, there's, if let's say the eugenics was the law of the day,
right?
Because my sister is paralyzed and
she's been disabled by an accident in the hospital, so she can't talk, she can't walk, she can't speak or move, she can't feed herself and all that type of stuff. So she's okay, she's disabled. Just let her go.
That's right, and an
and that's the Terry Schiavo mentality.
Terry Schiavo, absolutely. And well, you'll notice the Darwinists, I mean, Christians have always built hospitals, orphanages, asylums, always reaching out to the disadvantaged, the needy, the poor, because they're God's children. And we don't value them by their economic, we value them how their Creator values them. Have you ever seen a Darwin hospital? Darwin Old Folks Home? If you do, don't check in. Because
you'll never check out like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave, you know? Because that's exactly right.
So this is what Bryan was teaching. This is why one species out of 2 million was taught. I'd say a second major misunderstanding is that people think that the scientists were kept off the witness stand at the Scopes trial because the creationists had no scientific leg to stand on and they were running scared. Here's the real truth. The honest truth is that the prosecution, that would be the state of Tennessee, did argue that scientific testimony was irrelevant because the crime was, the alleged crime, it's a misdemeanor, $100.
Right.
But the alleged crime, or the question was, did John Scopes teach in a public school evolution? That's it. The background theory and whether it was a good law or not, the prosecution said, take care of that in Memphis or the state capital of... That's the legislative branch. We're just supposed to decide, did he or didn't he teach the kids evolution? All right, so they opposed it as irrelevant, and the judge ruled in their favor. Here's what people don't know. The judge wanted the show to go on, as did everybody.
Yeah, the whole town, it was a big carnival.
The whole town, great carnival, people from all over the country, all over the world. And so the defense said, well, how about if we put our experts on the stand, and they can testify without the jury there. And we'll do it so that the appellate court can find out what they would say. Well, the judge thought, this is cool. The jury's off.
Okay.
No problem. We can have the scientists testify.
Okay.
Bryan said this, well, I assume if they take the stand that we can cross-examine them. Clarence Darrow said, absolutely not. There'll be no cross-examination of
Well,
the
I didn't know that.
No
Okay.
one, nobody knows
Did you know
that.
that? I didn't know that.
You go to you watch any documentary, you read any story about the Scopes trial, they will not tell you that Clarence Darrow could have put 50 scientists on the stand, sort of as a little sideshow because the jury's not there, but that's fine. Brian was up for the debate, and Clarence Darrow didn't want him to take the stand. Why wouldn't they take the stand? I'd suggest 3 reasons. One, they were eugenic. The majority of them were members of eugenic societies. So they were racists of the Nazi sort. 2, they had a weak case, a very scientifically weak case. And there was a great number of scientists that were contradicting, as now.
Yes.
They don't like to debate now, they didn't like to debate then.
Right.
And then 3, the scientists that were pulled into Dayton to testify were all Christians, not Christian scientists, they were all Christians, but of a certain ilk. They were the sort of Christians in the 1920s and 30s that denied the virgin birth, denied the deity of Christ, denied the resurrection. So you get a scientist on the stand.
Yeah, what kind of a Christian are these
That's
guys?
right.
Okay, right.
You get a scientist on the stand, and Brian says, now, Rich, I understand, you don't believe in the Bible, or you don't believe in the book of Genesis, literal, but do you believe in the virgin birth? Well, when you start denying things like that in Tennessee, people say, you're a phony.
Yeah.
And these gentlemen, I believe, did not want to take the stand, and they had every opportunity. So who was running scared?
Okay, so that's the top 2. Okay, let's give a couple more reasons then.
Well,
a couple more differences, I guess, in perception into reality.
Let's take, if you watch Inherit the Wind, there was much made of the fact that sex was presented to the William Jennings Bryan character, and the Darrow character holds open his Bible and he says, I'm reading all these people, so-and-so begat so-and-so, so-and-so begat so-and-so.
Yeah.
How did all this beginning happen? And of course the Christian is now flustered. We're talking about sex, and he's all flustered, and he says, well, did they come about by sex? And he says, yes. He says, well, what's the Christian view of sex? And this man, who was minister, says, well, sex is original sin. And Darrow said, you mean all these people in the Bible came forth through original sin? Well, original sin has nothing to do with sex. It's never been
That's what's in the movie, you're saying?
That's what's in the movie.
Okay.
So they pull out these completely fanciful exchanges for the purpose of showing that Christianity is bigoted, sexually repressed, backward, afraid of science. This tremendous
and none of that's
slander.
true, because he never said that in the train.
It never came up whatsoever. Never came up. Although there was referenced in Brian's closing argument. He said, if you look at the evolutionary literature, they do espouse a human sexual conduct that should match the animals. I mean, we are animals. We're the fruit of the flower of evolution. So what do the monkeys do? What do the dogs do? What do the and that should really govern our sexual norms. So they were aware that sex is an important undercurrent, and it is today. It's a very important undercurrent to evolutionary debate, is what are the sexual norms?
Now, here's the interesting thing, though, is that evolution really does not have an explanation for the origin of sex.
It makes no sense based on asexual reproduction is much more efficient. Or
you have to evolve 2 things, one that fits into the other simultaneously, that beautifully mesh. And
so it's really a ridiculous thing to bring that up, because if there was a good argument for the origin of sex, well, we really have the upper hand with that if you really look at the science of the whole thing.
That's right.
And when you get down to the bottom line of science, which is really why we have the TV show, is because we're interested in showing good science.
Doug, I go farther than that. Says, suppose you could get 2 ape-like hominids, to use their terminology, that one fit into the other. Why aren't we all a bunch of genetic retards? There is no evolutionary, we inbreed too much based on uniformitarian type of thinking, that is the present is the key to the past. We should all be retards. The Bible has an answer for that. We were created perfect, and we've been running downhill since then.
That's right, a perfect genome.
Where evolution is contradictory to that. It says we're going uphill, but the science seems to belie that quite heavily. Yeah, so I was just curious. I did not know that was a thing in the movie that was not in the transcripts, because I know there's a lot of things they
Well,
pull out like that. And one of the things I know, this may not be one of your top 10, but is that the guy, John T. Scopes, never actually did teach evolution, as I
That's right.
understand it. That's one of the big things that I do know is that
That's
it
right.
was a Trump job, and he says, okay, I'll go and do it. But he taught what did he teach? A biology
Phys ed
class
Phys
or
ed,
something?
and he was a football coach and a
Yeah.
math teacher.
But he never
and-
taught evolution. But he
That's
says, "Okay,
right.
I'll be your guinea pig for this thing."
That's right. And he never took the stand.
To his life, to the end of his life, apparently he denied he ever taught it.
That's
You know,
right.
I understand that he never said that he ever taught evolution ever. You
That's
know,
right, yeah.
and yet you would have thought that this was the big thing. He was in there. He's an innocent victim. You know, he was all part of the carnival.
Right. Well, in the movie, they show him getting arrested in front of his students and
Oh, yeah,
embarrassing
yeah, yeah.
them and humiliating them.
Right.
And he was putting on a good-natured test of a statute. And
See, the thing about Hollywood is you catch them in stuff like this, they go, well, it's only a movie.
That's right.
It's
We
kind
changed-
of like the Da Vinci Code. And you know
That's
what
right.
I'm saying? Look, I can accept that if you would say at the beginning, look, this is a movie, this is all made up stuff. We just took something. But you don't do that. You treat it like fact until you get busted.
well, and
That's what happens. And then
There's hundreds
Hide.
of facts that are absolutely, like William Jennings Bryan ran for presidency three separate times
Three
on
times.
certain years. Well, they mentioned those 3 years in the movie, so they mix truth and error in such a way that it's almost impossible to separate it.
Yeah.
And then when someone comes along and says, well, it's just a movie, get over it, say, okay, tell me what part of the movie is true and what part is false. They don't know.
They don't know.
Which means they've accepted basically the whole
premise.
thing.
Yeah.
So Hollywood, and then they say, hey, it's not my fault, get a grip, why are you so sensitive?
Now, what's interesting is that I've been sort of involved in a Broadway play production that we were contacted by the marketing company for this Broadway play, Inherit the Wind, and starring Christopher Plummer and Brian Dennehy.
Right.
So we got some big names associated with this. And they asked if they could use one of my articles in their playbill, which is the thing that they hand out at the play, and they have it for sale as well. And so I've pretty much agreed to that, and I think the play is actually continuing right at this moment. But you know, the thing of this is that I wouldn't expect them to actually change the play Inherit the Wind to be anything different than what it was intended to be. It was a polemic and a mocking
polemic.
That's right. It's an anti-Christian
Christianity.
polemic.
And you know, even in the playbill, I wouldn't expect them to be, you know, to have actually use our articles. I thought was sort of a breath of fresh air to actually try and show a balance between the 2 points of view. But I wouldn't even expect them to be fair in that. I would expect them to pick my article apart, which you know, I would also probably think that they picked this particular article because maybe there's something that they could see that it's probably not the sharpest tool in my box. You know?
Yeah.
But
What was the article?
it was called "Creation is Scientific, but Evolution is Religious," and so it was about that particular piece of the puzzle. You know, that showing that. You know, there's very much in the terms of science that has to do with our point of view, as well as evolution is really all about religion. It's
Naturalism. That's their
naturalism
religion,
is
yeah.
really what it's all about. Now, I imagine what they are going to do with it in the playbill is pick that all apart. Well, that's up to them. But here's the deal. It's my points of view is in there. They can go to our website and look up what we actually believe, and so maybe there's a few people that can be influenced by this in a positive way, and I hope so.
I mean, it's amazing, you know, because in the movie I remember oftentimes they would ask all these questions. I can't remember if this was in the movie. It seems like it was. Did he asked him where? Did he ask him where Cain get his wife? Did he ask him in the
Yeah,
movie?
that's probably one.
That's probably one in the movie that was in there, and I don't know whether that was.
Jonah swallowing the whale.
Yes, yeah, he asked a bunch of questions. They're actually fairly easily answered, but I don't know if William Jennings Bryan actually was able to answer them, or whether he did, or whether those questions were actually asked. Can you tell us whether they were? Do you
Yeah,
know?
they were a long string of questions like that were asked, as well as some bogus questions like how many
But he
people.
did take the stand, actually.
He
though.
did take the
Okay.
stand, and And if you read the trial transcript, which is available on that website, it's a public domain document now as well, I would say that Brian got the better of Darrow, even in the cross-examination, even in what you've heard was a total rout. Brian was quite witty, he was intelligent, Darrow was obviously throwing sucker punches, and at the end of it, Darrow stood up and he said, "You know I'm examining you on your fool religion that no intelligent Christian on earth believes." So he stands up and in this burst of bigotry says, "Your fool religion that no intelligent Christian on earth believes." Well, what was it that all it was a belief in God and in miracles and in creation. That's what no intelligent Christian on earth, according to Clarence Darrow, believes.
Kind of funny here.
It's not true.
75 years later or more, what is it, 1926 when it happened? Or
Yeah.
So you got
1925, yeah.
almost 82 years later. 48% of the people still believe in a world that's 10,000 years old or less, and that we were created in our present form. That's quite amazing after all this propaganda.
Have held up for quite some time here.
I guess we must be the most ignorant nation on the face of the earth, man. But the fact of the matter is that okay. Well, so we is there another big point that you think you'd like to?
If there's time for one more, I love this one. People imagine that in 1925, the high school textbook, you'd open it up and there'd be Adam and Eve and God and creation and all that kind of stuff. For 20 years prior to 1925, it was 100% evolution, not a mention of God, creation, anything like that. So these textbooks were entirely evolutionary, just like today. The Christians are trying to say, hey, we pay the money, it's our kids. Could we have some balance? And the answer is no. Just keep sending your checks. But the textbooks are all evolutionary and have been since 1900.
Is that, I wonder if that guy, Dewey, a guy like, guys
Dewey
like that, and really it's all about indoctrinating the children.
Well, when you get right down to it, it goes back even further. I have a book written in 1861, which belonged to my great-great-grandfather, and at that point in time, it was showing a Christian point of view, but it also had the day, age, and gap compromises already, with Cuvier and Lyell and some of those things in the geological section. And so there was a lot of waffling going on even at that point in time, although I think there's always been a witness from that time to present where people have had biblical scholarship believing in the Word of God, the literal six-day creation.
I think of the biblical geologists and all kinds of stuff.
And the latest Creation Research Society Quarterly, there's an article by Andrew Kulikowski who that talks about that, how over those years there was always that sort of witness there.
We're getting really short on time, but the thing you brought up about how Darrow really didn't look that good against Brian reminds me of an earlier one against Huxley and Wilberforce, which supposedly Wilberforce got shellacked, but those who were witnesses said Wilberforce really got the better of Huxley. This is really the propaganda tool of the evolutionists. It's unbelievable. And so I'm glad we've got a lot of writers and prolific and websites like yours, and really happy to have you here.
We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.